Lily Park clutched her presentation folder against her chest as she practically ran through the marble hallways of Sterling Enterprises. Her heels clicked frantically against the polished floors, echoing in the impressive corporate building that still felt like a maze after only 3 days of working here. The subway had been delayed for 20 minutes that morning, and now she was already 15 minutes late for her very first real presentation as a marketing intern. Her phone buzzed with another text from her supervisor. "Where are you?" "The team is waiting." Lily felt her stomach drop even further. This was supposed to be her chance to show what she could do, to prove that hiring her wasn't a mistake. She had spent all weekend preparing her research on coffee buying habits among young adults, complete with colorful charts and graphs that she hoped would impress the junior marketing team. The building was enormous, with glass walls and modern art everywhere. Lily had gotten lost twice yesterday just trying to find the bathroom. Now, squinting at the small print on her phone where she had saved the meeting location, she searched desperately for conference room B12. The hallways all looked the same, with their gray carpeting and identical wooden doors. B10, B11, she muttered to herself, speed-walking past each door. She could feel sweat starting to form on her forehead despite the building's air conditioning. Finally, she spotted what looked like B12 at the end of the hallway. Without stopping to double-check, she grabbed the handle and burst through the door. "Sorry, I'm late, everyone. I have the coffee research ready and—" Lily's voice trailed off as she took in the scene before her. Instead of the small conference room with 5 junior marketing staff she was expecting, she found herself in an enormous boardroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Around a massive mahogany table sat about 15 people in expensive suits, all staring at her with surprised expressions. At the head of the table sat a man in his early 30s with dark hair and serious eyes. Even sitting down, Lily could tell he was tall and had the kind of presence that commanded attention. His perfectly tailored navy suit probably cost more than Lily made in 3 months. This was definitely not her supervisor, Mike from marketing. The silence in the room was deafening. Lily felt like she might faint. She looked down at her folder full of coffee shop surveys and pie charts about millennial spending habits, then back up at the room full of what were clearly very important business people. Some of them were checking expensive watches. Others had laptops open with serious-looking financial documents visible on their screens. "I'm so sorry," Lily stammered, backing toward the door. "I think I'm in the wrong room. I was looking for B12 and I thought—" She trailed off, realizing she was rambling and probably making things worse. The man at the head of the table raised his hand slightly, and somehow that small gesture made everyone else in the room stop their murmuring. His voice was calm and controlled when he spoke. "What's your presentation about?" "Oh, it's nothing important," Lily said quickly, still clutching her folder. "Just some research about coffee preferences. Really, I should go—" "Coffee preferences," he repeated, and there was something almost amused in his tone. "We were just discussing market trends for the 18 to 35 demographic." He gestured to an empty chair near the middle of the table. "Why don't you tell us what you found?" Lily looked around the room again. Half the people looked annoyed, checking their phones and whispering to each other. But the other half seemed curious, leaning forward slightly. The man who had spoken was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I really don't think—" Lily started, but he interrupted her gently. "Please, I'd like to hear what you discovered." Something in his tone made her believe he was genuinely interested, not just being polite. Lily took a shaky breath and walked to the empty chair, setting her folder on the table with trembling hands. She had never presented to anyone more senior than college professors and her marketing supervisor. "Well," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, then cleared her throat and tried again. "I surveyed about 200 people between ages 18 and 30 about their coffee buying habits." She opened her folder and pulled out her first chart, a bright blue and green pie graph that suddenly looked very amateur compared to the sleek presentations scattered around the table. As she started talking about her research, something strange happened. Her nerves began to settle. This was information she knew inside and out. She had spent hours talking to people outside coffee shops, analyzing data, and finding patterns that surprised even her. "The interesting thing is that price isn't actually the biggest factor for this age group," Lily said, gaining confidence as she went. "Even people on tight budgets will pay more for coffee if the shop has good Wi-Fi, comfortable seating, and what they call good vibes." She pulled out another chart. 68% said they choose their regular coffee shop based on atmosphere, rather than just the taste of the coffee. She looked up and realized that several people were actually taking notes. The man at the head of the table was leaning forward, his chin resting on his hand as he listened intently. "What about loyalty programs?" asked a woman in a red blazer. "That's where it gets really interesting," Lily said, flipping to her next page. "Traditional punch cards don't work well with this group. They want apps, social media integration, and rewards that feel personalized. But here's the key thing I found." She paused, making eye contact around the room. "They want to feel like they're supporting something bigger than just buying coffee. Shops that partner with local charities or use sustainable practices get way more repeat customers." For the next 10 minutes, Lily found herself fielding questions from around the table. These people were asking about market penetration, demographic breakdowns, and seasonal variations. She answered as best she could, sometimes admitting when she didn't have specific data but offering to find out. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then the man at the head of the table started clapping, and others joined in. Lily felt her cheeks flush red. "That was exactly the kind of fresh perspective we needed," he said, standing up. He was indeed tall, probably 6'2", and when he smiled, his whole face changed from serious businessman to someone who looked like he might actually be fun to have coffee with. "Thank you all for your time," he continued, addressing the room. "I think we have enough information to move forward with the Tokyo partnership. We'll reconvene next week to finalize details." As people began gathering their papers and laptops, he walked over to where Lily was frantically stuffing her charts back into her folder. "I'm David," he said, extending his hand. "David Mitchell." Lily shook his hand, still not quite believing what had just happened. "Lily Park. And I am so incredibly sorry about interrupting your meeting. I was supposed to be in B12, but I must have read it wrong and A12 and B12, David said with a slight smile. "Easy mistake. Though I have to say, your accidental presentation might have just saved us from making a very expensive error in our new market expansion." "Really?" Lily asked, not sure if he was just being kind. "Really. We were about to invest heavily in a demographic we clearly don't understand as well as we thought." He paused. "What department are you with?" "Marketing. I'm an intern, actually. Today was my first real presentation, except..." She gestured around the now mostly empty boardroom. "Not here, obviously." David nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you should probably get to your actual meeting. They're waiting for you in B12. As they walked toward the door together, Lily couldn't help but ask, "Who are all those people, if you don't mind me asking?" "Board members, a few senior executives, and some potential investors from Japan," David said casually, as if accidentally presenting to international investors was a normal Tuesday morning occurrence. Lily stopped walking. "Investors? Oh no. Oh no, no, no. I probably just ruined a huge business deal with my charts about coffee shop Wi-Fi." David stopped too and turned to face her. "Actually, you might have just made it better. Sometimes the best insights come from the most unexpected places." As they reached the elevator, David pressed the call button and then looked at Lily with an expression that seemed almost curious. "Good luck with your presentation. Lily Park from marketing." The elevator doors opened, and as Lily stepped inside, she realized she had never asked David what his role was at the company. Something about the way everyone had deferred to him, the way he had commanded the room without raising his voice, suggested he was pretty important, but she was too embarrassed to ask now. As the elevator doors closed, she saw David still standing in the hallway, and unless she was imagining things, he was smiling. Word spread fast in the Sterling Enterprises building. By Thursday morning, everyone in the marketing department had heard about the intern who accidentally crashed the CEO's board meeting and somehow impressed a room full of international investors. Lily found herself getting curious looks from coworkers as she walked to her tiny cubicle in the corner of the marketing floor. "Is it true you made the CEO laugh?" asked Jenny from social media marketing, appearing at Lily's desk with wide eyes. "My friend in accounting said David Mitchell actually smiled during your presentation." Lily nearly choked on her coffee. "David Mitchell is the CEO?" she squeaked. Jenny stared at her like she had just asked if water was wet. "You didn't know? Girl, you presented market research to the CEO of Sterling Enterprises and had no idea who he was?" The realization hit Lily like a truck. No wonder everyone in that boardroom had been wearing such expensive suits. No wonder they had all gone silent when David spoke. She had accidentally wandered into a meeting with the head of one of the city's biggest companies and somehow lived to tell about it. The rest of that week passed in a blur of whispered conversations and curious stares from her coworkers. Lily tried to focus on her regular intern duties, filing reports, updating spreadsheets, and fetching coffee for the marketing team. But she couldn't stop thinking about those few minutes in the boardroom, the way David had listened so carefully to her research, and how he had seemed genuinely interested in what she had discovered. What she didn't notice was that David had started finding reasons to visit the marketing floor. On Friday, he stopped by to discuss the quarterly advertising budget with the marketing director. On Monday, he wanted to review the social media engagement reports. By Wednesday, he was asking detailed questions about consumer research methods, something that had never interested him before, according to his longtime assistant. Mr. Mitchell seems very involved in marketing initiatives lately, observed Rachel from the creative team as they watched him talking to their supervisor near the coffee machine. Usually he just approves our budgets and moves on. Lily glanced over from her desk where she was organizing survey responses. David was wearing another perfectly fitted suit, this one charcoal gray, and was nodding seriously as Mike, her supervisor, explained some campaign metrics. For just a moment, David's eyes wandered across the office space, and Lily quickly looked back down at her paperwork, her heart beating a little faster for reasons she couldn't explain. The following week brought the monthly marketing presentation to senior leadership. Lily had worked hard on analyzing the coffee shop data further, expanding her research to include broader consumer trends. She was excited to present her findings to the junior marketing team, but when the day arrived, she found herself sitting in the back of the conference room while Mike stood at the front, presenting her research as his own work. As I discovered through my consumer analysis, Mike was saying, clicking through slides that Lily had created, young consumers prioritize experience over pure product quality. They're willing to pay premium prices for brands that align with their personal values. Lily watched in stunned silence as Mike explained her methodology, shared her conclusions, and took credit for insights she had spent weeks developing. She wanted to speak up, but she was just an intern. Mike was her supervisor. Who would believe her? What Lily didn't see was David standing near the back of the room, having slipped in quietly during the presentation. His jaw tightened as he recognized the research from Lily's accidental boardroom presentation a week earlier. He had found her analysis compelling enough to share with the Tokyo investors, who had been so impressed they had agreed to a partnership based partly on her insights. Now here was her supervisor presenting the exact same work as his own. After the meeting ended and people began filing out, David approached Mike near the front of the room. "Interesting research on consumer behavior," he said casually. "When did you conduct those surveys?" Mike straightened up, clearly pleased to have the CEO's attention. "Oh, I've been working on this for months, Mr. Mitchell, really diving deep into the demographic data." "Months?" David asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because I remember seeing very similar findings presented last week. In fact, the slides look identical." Mike's confident expression faltered slightly. "Well, you know how these research projects evolve. Multiple people contribute ideas." David nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Of course. Team collaboration is important." He paused, looking directly at Mike. "I'd like to see more work like this. In fact, I think we need someone dedicated to consumer trend analysis for our upcoming product launches, someone who really understands this demographic." The next day, Lily was called into the HR office. Her stomach was in knots, convinced she was about to be let go for some unknown reason. Instead, she found herself being offered a new position, working directly on special projects for the executive team. "It's still considered part of your internship program," explained the HR director, "but you'll be working on higher-level initiatives. Product development, market analysis, that sort of thing. The CEO specifically requested someone with fresh perspectives on consumer behavior." Lily blinked in surprise. "Mr. Mitchell requested this?" He was quite impressed with some research he'd seen. Said we needed more innovative thinking in our consumer analysis. The new role meant Lily had her own small office on the 15th floor, just 2 floors below the executive level. It also meant she would need to present her findings directly to senior leadership on a regular basis. The first time she walked into David's office for a project review, she felt like she might pass out from nervousness. David's office was enormous, with windows that looked out over the entire city. Behind his massive desk were shelves lined with business books, awards, and what looked like family photos. But what caught Lily's attention were the small details. A coffee mug from a local shop that looked well used, a stack of documentary DVDs next to his computer, and a framed photo of what appeared to be a college graduation. The consumer preference data for the new product line, Lily said, setting her folder on his desk with shaking hands. David looked up from his laptop and smiled. Have a seat. And relax, this isn't a board meeting with investors. As Lily presented her findings, she found herself getting more comfortable. David asked thoughtful questions, built on her ideas, and even shared some insights from his own experience. What surprised her most was how easy he was to talk to once her initial nerves wore off. You mentioned that younger consumers value authenticity, David said, leaning back in his chair. How do you define that in a business context? I think it's about being genuine, Lily replied, forgetting to be nervous as she warmed to the topic. Like, not trying to be something you're not just to appeal to people. When companies fake being relatable or try too hard to be cool, people can tell. David nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting. I grew up in a working-class family. My dad was a mechanic, my mom cleaned offices. Sometimes I wonder if people in business forget what it's like to actually worry about spending $20. Lily looked at him with surprise. She had assumed someone in his position had always lived in a world of expensive suits and corporate boardrooms. Really? I work 2 part-time jobs just to help my little brother save for college. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong in places like this. Trust me, David said with a slight smile. Half the people in this building started somewhere else entirely. I used to think everyone else had some secret handbook for business success that I never got. They talked for another 20 minutes, and Lily found herself sharing stories about her family, her college experience, and even her love for documentaries about unusual topics. David mentioned that he had a collection of documentaries about everything from deep-sea exploration to urban architecture. Most people think documentaries are boring, Lily said, gathering her papers as the meeting wound down. Most people haven't seen the right documentaries, David replied. There's one about the history of elevator design that's surprisingly fascinating. As Lily walked back to her new office, she realized she had just spent the better part of an hour having what felt like a normal conversation with the CEO of Sterling Enterprises. He wasn't the intimidating figure she had imagined, but someone who seemed genuinely interested in her ideas and surprisingly easy to talk to. What she didn't realize was that David had been looking forward to their meeting all week, or that he found her passion for her work and her thoughtful questions refreshing in a world where most people told him what they thought he wanted to hear. She also didn't notice that he had started timing his coffee breaks to coincide with when she usually walked past his floor. The invitation arrived on Lily's desk on a Wednesday afternoon, printed on thick cream-colored paper that felt expensive between her fingers. Sterling Enterprises Annual Charity Gala, it read in elegant gold lettering. An evening to support local education initiatives. Lily stared at the invitation, confused. Interns didn't usually get invited to company galas. She walked over to Jenny's desk in the social media department. Did you get one of these? Lily asked, showing her the invitation. Jenny looked up from her laptop and her eyes widened. No way, you got invited to the charity gala? That's like the biggest event of the year. All the important clients will be there, plus city officials and celebrities. The tickets cost like $1,000 each. Lily felt her stomach drop. $1,000? There's no way I can afford that. No, Jenny said quickly. If you got invited, the company pays for it. But seriously, how did you score an invitation? I've been here 2 years and I've never been invited. The next day, Lily mustered up the courage to ask her supervisor about it. But when she mentioned the gala invitation to Mike, he just shrugged and said the guest list was handled by the executive office, not marketing. What Lily didn't know was that David had personally reviewed the guest list and noticed that none of the marketing interns had been included. He had quietly added her name, telling his assistant that the marketing team should be represented since they were documenting the event for the company's social media. The problem now was what to wear. Lily's entire wardrobe consisted of business casual clothes for work and casual clothes for everything else. She definitely didn't own anything appropriate for a fancy charity gala at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. You can borrow my black dress, offered her roommate Casey, pulling a sleek dress from her closet. I wore it to my cousin's wedding last year. It's a little long on me, but it should fit you perfectly. The dress was beautiful, simple but elegant with long sleeves and a modest neckline. When Lily tried it on, she actually felt sophisticated for the first time in her life. Casey helped her with makeup and even let her borrow a pair of heels that didn't completely destroy her feet. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel was even more impressive than Lily had imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the ballroom was filled with round tables covered in white linens and elaborate flower arrangements. Everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine. Women in designer gowns and men in perfectly tailored tuxedos. Lily found her assigned table near the back of the room, where several other Sterling Enterprises employees were already seated. She recognized a few faces from other departments, but nobody she knew well. As she settled into her chair, she couldn't help but feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. The evening began with cocktails and a silent auction featuring vacation packages, artwork, and experiences that cost more than Lily's monthly rent. She sipped her water and tried to look like she belonged, taking mental notes for the social media documentation she was supposed to be doing. "The shrimp is actually really good," said Tom from the IT department, who was sitting next to her. "I wasn't sure about eating anything this fancy, but I think it's just regular shrimp with a fancy name." Lily laughed, grateful for someone else who seemed as out of place as she felt. They were making small talk about the impressive ice sculpture when she noticed a commotion near the front of the ballroom. A woman in an expensive red gown was gesturing animatedly at one of the servers, clearly upset about something. As Lily watched, she realized what had happened. Someone had accidentally spilled red wine on the woman's dress, leaving a large stain across the silk fabric. Without thinking, Lily stood up. She had worked as a server during college and knew how awful it felt when things went wrong at fancy events. The server looked young and terrified as the woman continued to raise her voice, attracting attention from nearby tables. "I am so sorry. Mrs. Davidson," the server was saying, his hands shaking as he held a napkin. "Let me get you some club soda." "This dress costs more than you make in a month," the woman snapped. "Do you have any idea how to get wine stains out of silk?" Lily found herself walking toward the scene, her heart pounding. She didn't know what she was going to say, but she couldn't just stand there and watch someone get humiliated. "Excuse me," she said softly, approaching Mrs. Davidson. "I'm so sorry about your dress. I actually know a little about stain removal. My mom used to clean offices and she taught me some tricks." Mrs. Davidson turned to look at Lily, her expression still annoyed. "And you are?" "Lily Park from Sterling Enterprises. The key with red wine on silk is to dab, not rub, and use white wine first, then club soda. If we act fast, it might not leave a permanent stain." Before Mrs. Davidson could respond, a familiar voice joined the conversation. "Mrs. Davidson, I see you've met Lily, one of our most promising young analysts." Lily turned to see David approaching their small group. He was wearing a black tuxedo that fit him perfectly, and somehow he managed to look both formal and approachable at the same time. "David," Mrs. Davidson said, her tone immediately becoming warmer. "I was just dealing with a little accident." "Accidents happen at the best parties," David said with an easy smile. "In fact, I think they make events more memorable. Last year, I managed to walk into a glass door at the mayor's fundraiser. Made quite an impression." Mrs. Davidson actually laughed. "You didn't." "I did. Left a nose print and everything. But you know what? People still talk about that party, and not just because of the excellent cause we were supporting." He gestured toward Lily. "Lily's suggestion about the stain removal is spot on. She's full of practical wisdom." As David smoothly guided Mrs. Davidson toward the ladies' room where they could work on the stain, Lily found herself following along, still not quite believing she had just inserted herself into a situation involving someone who was clearly very important. 20 minutes later, they had managed to minimize the stain significantly, and Mrs. Davidson was actually thanking Lily for her help. "My housekeeper is going to be impressed when I tell her about the white wine trick," she said. When they returned to the ballroom, David fell into step beside Lily. "That was very kind of you," he said quietly. "I couldn't just watch," Lily replied. "I've been that server before. It's the worst feeling when something goes wrong and everyone's staring at you." David looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Most people would have just looked the other way. "Would you have looked the other way?" Lily asked. He considered this for a moment. I'd like to think I wouldn't, but honestly, I might have just told my assistant to handle it. You actually stepped in and helped. The rest of the evening passed more comfortably. David stayed near Lily's table and she found herself relaxing as they talked during dinner. He told her about the charity the gala was supporting, a program that provided college scholarships for first-generation students. My little brother is hoping for a scholarship like that, Lily mentioned, cutting into her dinner that she was pretty sure was the fanciest thing she had ever eaten. What's he want to study? David asked. Engineering. He's so much smarter than me. He actually understands math and science. I just understand people and what they want to buy. Understanding people is a lot harder than understanding math, David said. Math has rules that always work the same way. People are complicated. After dinner, there were speeches about the importance of education and a presentation about the students who had received scholarships the previous year. Lily found herself getting a little emotional listening to their stories, many of which reminded her of her own struggles to afford college. When the band started playing and people began moving to the dance floor, Lily assumed she would spend the rest of the evening at her table, probably taking photos for the company's social media accounts. Instead, David appeared beside her chair and extended his hand. Would you like to dance? Lily looked up at him in surprise. I'm not really much of a dancer, she said honestly. I mean, I can do the basic stuff, but this looks pretty fancy. It's just moving to music, David said with a smile. I promise not to try anything too complicated. The dance floor was filled with couples moving gracefully to a slow song. David led her to a spot near the edge, away from the more experienced dancers, and placed one hand gently on her waist while taking her other hand in his. Just follow my lead, he said softly. They moved slowly to the music, and Lily found that dancing with David was nothing like the awkward school dances she remembered. He was a good leader, guiding her movements without making her feel clumsy or self-conscious. You're better at this than you think, David said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. You're probably just a really good teacher, Lily replied, then immediately felt her cheeks get warm. Was that too forward? She was still learning how to talk to someone like David without either being too formal or too casual. As the song continued, they talked quietly about the evening, the charity, and the impressive venue. Lily found herself noticing small details about David that she hadn't seen before. The way his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled, how he seemed genuinely interested in everything she said, and how comfortable she felt despite being in such an unfamiliar setting. When the song ended, they stayed on the dance floor for. The Monday after the charity gala felt different. Lily noticed it the moment she stepped off the elevator onto her floor. Conversation stopped when she walked by. People looked at her with expressions she couldn't quite read, some curious, some annoyed, some almost amused. At first, she thought she was imagining things. Maybe she was just feeling self-conscious after spending Saturday night dancing with the CEO. But by Tuesday, the whispers were impossible to ignore. I heard she got invited to sit at the executive table, she overheard someone saying in the bathroom. Can you imagine? An intern sitting with board members? Well, we all know why she's getting special treatment, came another voice, and Lily's stomach dropped as she recognized it as belonging to Jessica from accounting. It's so obvious, Jessica continued. Pretty girl young. Gets pulled out of marketing for special projects right after accidentally meeting the CEO. Come on. Lily stood frozen in the bathroom stall, her hands shaking as she listened to them tear apart her reputation. She wanted to walk out and defend herself, but what could she say? That David had been treating her professionally? That she had earned her position through her work? Even to her own ears, it was starting to sound questionable. The worst part was that she began to doubt herself. Had David really been impressed by her coffee research, or had he just thought she was cute? Were her project assignments based on her abilities or on something else entirely? By Wednesday, Lily was avoiding the break room, eating lunch at her desk and trying to ignore the looks she got whenever she walked through the office. She threw herself into her work, determined to prove that she deserved her position. But the doubt was eating at her. That afternoon, she was walking past the executive conference room when she heard voices coming from inside. The door was slightly ajar and she couldn't help but catch part of the conversation. Mitchell's pet project is working out well, someone was saying, and Lily recognized the voice as belonging to Richard Hayes, one of the senior vice presidents. Though I'm not sure how sustainable this mentoring approach is, it's definitely unconventional, replied another voice. taking such a personal interest in one intern's development. But you have to admit the results speak for themselves. Oh, the work is good, Richard continued. I just wonder if David realizes how it looks. The optics aren't great. Young, attractive intern gets fast-tracked to special projects right after a chance encounter with the CEO. Lily felt like she might be sick. Pet project. That's how the senior executives saw her. Not as someone with valuable ideas or real potential, but as David's charity case. She leaned against the wall, trying to process what she had just heard. I'm sure it's all above board, the other voice was saying. David's not that type. But still, it sends a message to other employees about how to get ahead here. Lily couldn't listen to anymore. She walked quickly back to her office, closed the door, and sat down at her desk with tears burning her eyes. Everything she had worked for, every project she had completed, every insight she had provided, apparently everyone thought it was, all just because David felt sorry for her or found her attractive. She opened her laptop and began typing an email requesting a transfer back to regular marketing duties. She couldn't continue in her current role knowing that everyone saw her as David's pet project. It was humiliating and completely undermined any confidence she had built over the past few weeks. The next day, she was surprised to get a message from David's assistant, asking her to come to his office to discuss the transfer request. Lily's stomach churned as she rode the elevator up to the executive floor. She had hoped to avoid having to explain herself to David directly. David was standing by his window when she entered, looking out at the city below. He turned when she came in and she could see the confusion on his face. I got your transfer request, he said without preamble. I have to admit I don't understand it. Your work has been excellent, and the product development team specifically requested to keep you on their projects. Lily took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice steady. I think it would be better for everyone if I went back to regular intern duties. Better for everyone? David asked, moving to sit behind his desk. Or better for you? Both, Lily said, not meeting his eyes. I don't think this special project arrangement is working out. David was quiet for a moment, studying her face. This is about the gala, isn't it? He said finally. I shouldn't have asked you to dance. I crossed a line and now you're uncomfortable. No, Lily said quickly, then caught herself. I mean yes, but not in the way you think. Then help me understand, David said, leaning forward. Because from my perspective, you've been doing exceptional work, contributing valuable insights, and proving that my instinct to give you more challenging projects was correct. That was exactly the problem. But Lily didn't know how to explain it without sounding ungrateful or paranoid. People are talking, she said finally. People are always talking in offices, David replied. What are they saying that's upset you? Lily felt her cheeks burn. They think I'm getting special treatment because you like me. Not my work, me. David's expression hardened. Who said that? It doesn't matter who said it. The point is that everyone thinks it. Lily stood up, pacing to the window. They call me your pet project. They think the only reason I got promoted was because I'm young and what? David asked, his voice dangerously quiet. And because you feel sorry for me? Or because you think I'm attractive? Or because you want to help the poor little intern from the wrong side of town? Lily said, the words tumbling out faster now. Don't you see how that makes me feel? Everything I've accomplished here feels fake now. David stood up too, moving around his desk. Lily, that's not why I gave you those projects. You know that, right? Do I? Lily turned to face him, tears finally spilling over. How do I know? How does anyone know? You spend more time with me than with other employees. You invited me to the gala. You danced with me, She trailed off, remembering the moment on the terrace when it seemed like he might kiss her. I what? David asked softly. You make me feel like maybe you see me as more than just an employee, Lily whispered. And that terrifies me, because if that's true, then maybe everyone is right. Maybe I haven't earned anything. Before David could respond, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Mitchell, Catherine Walsh is here for your lunch meeting. Lily saw David's jaw tighten with frustration, but he pressed the intercom button. Send her in. The door opened and a woman walked in who looked like she had stepped out of a business magazine. Tall, confident, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit and expensive jewelry. She had the kind of presence that commanded attention, and she moved with the easy confidence of someone who belonged in executive offices. David, she said warmly, walking over to kiss his cheek in greeting. "You look wonderful." "Catherine," David replied, and Lily noticed that his voice sounded different, more formal, more guarded. "This is Lily Park, one of our analysts. Lily, this is Catherine Walsh, our new partner on the London expansion." Catherine turned to Lily with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How lovely to meet you." "I've heard so much about the innovative work being done here." Lily mumbled something polite in response, very aware of how young and inexperienced she must look, compared to this sophisticated woman who clearly moved in David's world with ease. "I should let you get to your meeting," Lily said, backing toward the door. "We're not done with our conversation," David said firmly. "I think we are," Lily replied, and walked out before he could respond. That evening, Lily decided to treat herself to dinner at a nice restaurant downtown. She needed to get out of her apartment and think about what she was going to do. The transfer request was submitted, but she was starting to wonder if she should just quit the internship entirely and take the job offer she had received from a smaller marketing firm the week before. The restaurant was busier than she expected, and she ended up waiting at the bar for a table. She was scrolling through her phone, trying not to think about her conversation with David, when she glanced up and saw a familiar figure at a corner table. It was David, and he was having dinner with Catherine Walsh. They were sitting close together, leaning in to talk quietly, and Catherine's hand was resting on David's arm as she spoke. They looked intimate, comfortable together in a way that spoke of a long relationship. Lily felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. Of course. Of course David was involved with someone like Catherine, someone successful, sophisticated, and appropriate for a man in his position. Someone who belonged in his world. She watched for another moment, seeing David smile at something Catherine said, seeing the easy way they interacted. This was what David's real life looked like. Not awkward conversations with confused interns who didn't know their place. Lily left the restaurant without eating, walking home in the cold evening air with tears streaming down her face. She had been so stupid to think that someone like David could be genuinely interested in someone like her. The executives were right. She was just a pet project. Someone David felt sorry for or found temporarily amusing. When she got home, she called the marketing firm that had offered her the job and accepted their position. Friday morning arrived with the kind of gray, drizzling rain that matched Lily's mood perfectly. She sat at her desk, staring at the cardboard box she had brought from home, trying to work up the courage to start packing her things. Her resignation letter had been delivered to HR an hour ago, and she knew it was only a matter of time before word spread through the office. She was placing her coffee mug in the box when David's assistant, Patricia, appeared at her office door. Patricia was in her 50s, had worked at Sterling Enterprises for over a decade, and had a reputation for being both efficient and completely professional. She never got involved in office gossip or personal matters. "Miss Park," Patricia said, stepping into the office and closing the door behind her. "I heard about your resignation." Lily looked up, surprised. "Word travels fast around here." "It does," Patricia agreed, then sat down in the chair across from Lily's desk, something she had never done before. "I also heard some things about why you're leaving. About people calling you Mr. Mitchell's pet project." Lily felt her cheeks burn. "I don't really want to talk about it." "I think you should hear what I have to say," Patricia said firmly. "I've been David Mitchell's assistant since he became CEO 3 years ago. I handle his calendar, his correspondence, and I know exactly why he does what he does." Lily stopped packing and looked at Patricia curiously. "The day after your accidental board meeting presentation," Patricia continued, "Mr. Mitchell came to me and asked me to pull the files on the marketing department's recent consumer research. He wanted to see everything that had been submitted in the past 6 months. "Why?" Lily asked. "Because he recognized quality work when he saw it, and he wanted to know who had been producing it. When he found your original research, the same research you presented that day, he realized your supervisor had been taking credit for your ideas for months." Lily stared at her. He knew. And he was furious. Not at you, at the system that was letting a promising young analyst get buried under someone else's ambition. Patricia leaned forward. "Do you know what he said to me that day?" Lily shook her head. "He said, Find a way to give her the opportunities she's earned without making it obvious we're going around her supervisor. That's why you got moved to special projects. Not because he felt sorry for you, not because he thought you were attractive, but because he recognized that your work was being stolen and he wanted to fix it. Lily felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs, but the executive said, "The executives don't know the details. They see a young employee getting promoted quickly, and they make assumptions. But I handle all of Mr. Mitchell's project assignments, and every single one he gave you came with specific notes about why he thought you were the right person for the job. Your demographic research, your consumer insight analysis, your trend forecasting. He chose you for those projects because your work was better than analysts with twice your experience." Patricia reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. "These are copies of the project assignment memos he wrote about you. Read them." With shaking hands, Lily opened the folder. The first memo was dated just days after her accidental board presentation. "Recommend assigning consumer trend analysis to L. Park, Ernoi. Demographic research methodology is innovative, and her insights about authenticity in marketing could be valuable for upcoming product launches." The second memo was from 2 weeks later. L. Park's analysis of millennial spending habits was thorough and well-researched. Suggest additional consumer behavior projects. She has a natural ability to identify patterns that others miss. There were 5 more memos, each one focused entirely on her work, her capabilities, and her potential contributions to various projects. Not one mentioned her appearance, her background, or anything personal. "I don't understand," Lily said, looking up at Patricia. "If this is all true, why didn't he tell me?" "Because he was trying to be professional," Patricia replied. "He was walking a fine line between helping you succeed and maintaining appropriate boundaries. He knew that if anyone suspected he had personal feelings for you, it would undermine everything you accomplished." "Personal feelings?" Lily repeated. Patricia smiled slightly. "Miss Park, in 3 years of working for David Mitchell, I have never seen him rearrange his schedule to accommodate project meetings with junior staff. I've never seen him personally review analyst reports that would normally go through 3 levels of management first. And I've certainly never seen him pace around his office for 2 hours after a resignation letter crossed his desk. He's upset about my resignation?" "Upset is an understatement. He's been in meetings all morning trying to figure out how to convince you to stay, which is complicated because apparently there's a situation developing that might require him to relocate." Lily felt her heart skip. "Relocate?" Patricia checked her watch. "He's in a meeting right now with the board, discussing the Singapore expansion. They want him to oversee it personally, which would mean moving there for at least 2 years. She stood up. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I think you should know. He's been stalling on giving them an answer." After Patricia left, Lily sat staring at the memos for a long time. Everything she thought she knew about the past few months had been wrong. David hadn't been treating her like a charity case or a pet project. He had been quietly ensuring she got the opportunities she deserved, while trying to maintain professional boundaries, and now he might be leaving for Singapore, possibly because she had made him think she wasn't interested in anything more than a professional relationship. By late afternoon, Lily had made her decision. She left the office and took a taxi across town to David's apartment building, a sleek high-rise in one of the city's most expensive neighborhoods. The doorman called up to announce her, and a few minutes later, she was standing in front of David's door, her heart pounding. He answered on the second knock, and she could see the surprise on his face when he saw her standing there. "Lily," he said, "I heard about your resignation. I was hoping we could talk." "I know about the memos," she said quickly before she lost her nerve. "Patricia showed me the project assignments, the real reasons you gave me those opportunities." David stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I should have told you myself. I was trying to protect your reputation, but I ended up making you doubt your own abilities instead." "I saw you at dinner with Catherine Walsh," Lily said, stepping into his apartment. "You looked comfortable together." David closed the door and turned to face her. "Catherine and I dated briefly about 2 years ago. It didn't work out. We're better as business partners. That dinner was about the London expansion project." "But she's perfect for you," Lily said. "Successful, sophisticated, from your world." "She's not you," David interrupted. "Lily, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that day you burst into the wrong meeting room." Not because I felt sorry for you, not because I wanted to help the poor intern, but because you were brilliant and genuine and completely yourself in a room full of people trying to impress each other. Lily felt tears starting to form. I was so scared that everyone was right, that I hadn't earned anything. You earned everything, David said firmly. Your ideas, your insights, your work ethic, that's all you. I just made sure the right people saw it. Patricia said you might be moving to Singapore, Lily said quietly. David was quiet for a moment. The board wants me to oversee the expansion personally. It's a good opportunity for the company. But I keep thinking about what I'd be leaving behind. He looked at her intently. What I'd be giving up. Lily took a step closer to him. What if I told you that I've spent the last month falling for my CEO and being terrified that it was the stupidest thing I could possibly do? David's expression changed, hope flickering in his eyes. What if I told you that I've been falling for a brilliant analyst who challenges me, makes me laugh, and sees the world in ways that constantly surprise me? I'd say that sounds like a conversation we should have had weeks ago, Lily said, smiling through her tears. David reached for her hands. I'm sorry I didn't handle this better. I was trying so hard to be professional that I made you doubt yourself instead. I'm sorry I didn't trust that you saw something real in my work, Lily replied. And I'm sorry it took Patricia showing me those memos for me to believe it. So where does this leave us? David asked, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her hands. Well, Lily said, looking up at him, I have a job offer from another company that starts Monday. But I'm thinking I might want to stay at Sterling Enterprises instead. And I have a board meeting Monday morning where I need to give them an answer about Singapore. David said, What are you going to tell them? David smiled. The first genuine smile she had seen from him in days. I'm going to tell them I've found something here worth staying for. When he kissed her, soft and careful at first, then deeper when she kissed him back, Lily felt like everything finally made sense. All the confusion, all the misunderstandings, all the fear about not being good enough, it all fell away, replaced by the simple truth that sometimes the best things happen when you're brave enough to be yourself. 6 months later, Lily was sitting in conference room A12, the same room where she had accidentally made her first